right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the very first Zoom call for St. Matthew's House in the summer of 2020. I'm Bill Curry. I'm the Vice President of Development here at St. Matthew's House. I'm here with Steve Brooder, our CEO, along with Ray Steadman, our Vice President of Programs. And we are down a person today. We are missing Lorna McLean, the Director of Food Assistance here at St. Matthew's House, and she's out ill. She may be watching, I'm not sure, but we desperately miss her and wish her well and get her back here soon. And so we are talking today about hunger and trends in Southwest Florida. What are we seeing? I know Steve does a lot of searching and connecting across the country. Ray, you're on the ground a lot as well here in Southwest Florida. So we're going to do a deep dive a little bit into trends in Southwest Florida, but also our responses and some ideas for the future that we're cultivating as well. Let's start with just a reminder to folks online is that we are going to have a segment at the end that's question and answer. And so if you would like to participate in that, we've got our staff here that's monitoring that feature. Don't do chat, do Q&A. And so we'd love to try to get some questions answered for you at the end. But let's get started a little bit and let's talk about trends that we're seeing. There's so much to talk about, but Steve, why don't you get us started?
Sure. There's food insecurity, and that's really what we're talking about when we talk about hunger, is really a growing problem in our community and across the country. And now we have inflation over 9%, which is just adding to the fuel to the fire. We're seeing grocery costs go way up. Food costs are up over 12%, but we also see rent and fuel and electricity all up. So this is just adding a lot of pressure on many households that are just trying to make ends meet. But we have to go back. I want to go back to pre-COVID. When we look back to March of 2020, we were distributing about 300 to 400 boxes of groceries a month. Then COVID hit. So then we went up to 4,000. We exploded to 4,000 boxes distributed in April. And it just continued to grow. It grew from there. Now we're well over 20,000 boxes of groceries distributed every month, and we're on the front lines. We're there doing it. Today, we're in a brand new warehouse that is going to equip us to better serve people in our community. So we're here to address the needs of hunger in Southwest Florida.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And you're right. I think that's one of the things that even in your comments there is that we're both looking at systemic forces while we also really value the individual story. And some people ask, what's the changing face of homelessness, or what's the changing face of hunger that we're seeing? We actually put together a short compilation here, just about 30 seconds, of a kind of the voices of hunger. These are actual real people that have recently called and left messages about their situation.
Hi, my name is Jenna, and I was just inquiring about food assistance. I'm a single mom.
I'm a senior citizen.
We need some assistance with food.
My name is Aaron. Both me and my wife are out of work.
My name is Jennifer.
We have our last $60, which we were hoping to use for gas to get a job.
I've been waiting for my food stamps for a month, and I've been playing phone tag with the assistant.
I'm really sorry to bother you.
I'm just wondering if we can come up there and get some food.
I'm in need of food, and I'm not sure where to go.
Hi, Lorna.
This is Elizabeth.
Hello, my name is Callum.
Dire straits right now. I need to get help. I have 6 people I'm trying to feed here, and it's not an easy thing to do.
Me and my fiance are kind of struggling, working check to paycheck.
I cannot drive, and I have nobody to drive me to pick up food.
We are trying to make it by, and food is just really kind of killing us.
My number is 239. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but for me to hear that, it's heartbreaking, right? And it's just such a great reminder of why we do what we do. And I think that's one of the things I appreciate about St. Matthew's House, as still being kind of one of the relatively new faces here in the organization, is that we both care about the systemic forces, but we also deeply care about that individual story. And we'll get more to it later, but it's about food for survival, but it's really we're hoping for a lot more. past that. And so let's talk to one of those other forces, Steve and Ray. Before the pandemic, we were headed down a strategic path at St. Matthew's House related to food deserts. Talk a little bit about that and where we were headed and why we how we ended up deviating from that.
Sure. Yeah. We had always been blessed with more food than we could use. And that's really where we were gaining most of the supply that we were distributing every month. So that would typically come into the shelter. Our kitchen was in the shelter. We went through a remodel starting in 2018, 19, finished up around in 2020. But the pantry would be removed from the shelter. And at that point, we had to come up with a plan. How do we impact Southwest Florida without having this room that we had used for storing food, packaging food, and then distributing food within that facility? So we had talked about, Steve and I had talked about the possibility of taking our excess and then going to these communities that would be considered food deserts, starting, of course, in our local area, impacting our local community like we always have. But out of our abundance, out of the excess food over and above what we serve our residents or the homeless population, we would then take that food. We initially talked and said, we'll get a small truck, like a 14 to 16 footer. And we had purchase orders that we had put together for shelving units like this with casters. And literally our plan was to just roll into a community, partner with a church, go into like a fellowship hall with some church volunteers, and then invite the community in to take advantage of the food that we had on the shelves. And we literally had a video that said, we'll bring the food, you bring the volunteers, we'll bring the food, and we'll serve our community together. So that was kind of what the plan was prior to the pandemic.
Yeah. And then like so many things, COVID happens and we pivot, and it's inclusive of many food deserts, but not exclusive to food deserts. It's because so many more pockets of need emerged over the last couple of years. Let's talk about a couple misconceptions. We see thousands of people in line every week. We hear their stories. Sometimes it's easy for folks who are not in that situation to think we know why someone's in a food line. And so let's talk a little bit about a misconception that kind of everybody's got equal access to food in Southwest Florida.
Yeah. So again, food insecurity is the problem. And we've heard before, there's some 20,000 families that come through the distribution lines. Do they really need the food or do they want the food? But we have stories over and over again through the distribution lines, and like the voices that you heard on that recording, that really display that there's a lot of hurting families in our community. So we're here to serve. We don't turn anybody away. We are working on some systems to be able to track our recipients and provide better data to feed that back to our food banks, which is where the majority of our food comes from. So being good partners, we want to do that, but it's a process that we work through. But I've heard many of the stories, and I've talked to many of the people, and certainly our church partners that are big volunteers for us also know the hurt that a lot of families are feeling when they come to our distributions.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, for all the stories we know, there's probably 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 that we don't know. But a lot of the stories have this same theme. And it's just what Steve mentioned in the beginning. It's inflation, it's food cost. When you talk about that 12% or 9% number, where that's just an average. Some of those, when you dive into that data, some of the food has went up 20, 30, 40%. So that's just an average. So when you look at who's coming through the line and those misconceptions about who we're serving, most of those folks have an income. Most of those folks have a job or two. There's a lot of families that come through that line. So when we look at it more granular, when we get into who are these folks, these are folks that we would call our neighbors. These are folks that we don't know what our neighbor's income is. We don't know what their situation is. A lot of times the folks that are coming through that line, they'll ride together. And they may ride with the neighbor that has the nicest car. So that can sometimes create this misconception that people don't really need the food. They're just here to take advantage of an opportunity. And the challenge with that is that that person may have borrowed that car. We don't really know who owns the car. We don't check those things out. So we just leave our judgment hat at home. And as the folks are coming through the line, they're waiting in line for usually more than 30 minutes, sometimes as much as an hour. And typically folks that are getting a very small amount of food aren't waiting that long because they're trying to take advantage of an opportunity.
Let's dig into it a little bit more on the job side of things. There's a lot of folks who are coming to us for assistance are employed, and their wages haven't kept up with inflation. Unpack that for me a little bit, how this food assistance can really be helpful in so many other areas of a person's life.
So we call our food assistance program really a homeless prevention program. And what you just mentioned, Bill, people that are working but really stretched with these inflationary pressures now, they come to us and they say, I'm down to my last half tank of gas in my car, but I need groceries to feed my family. So we're hearing and we know that the groceries that we distribute can just help that family get by. They can divert those resources to gas in their car or pay their rent, medical costs, other needs that they have.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Let's take a quick break. We put together a few of those stories of folks that we've met recently. Special thanks to our team here at St. Matthew's House, who's out and about just listening to folks' stories. Put together a few of them right here for us.
So who are the people experiencing hunger who need our help each week? Maria is a mother of 3 who rushes each morning to take her children to school. She then goes to work before leaving to spend her lunch break waiting in line at our distribution to help feed her family. Maria knows that by saving $100 each week in food costs, she now can afford to pay her rent or other bills. There's also Andrew, who rode his bicycle 10 miles round trip to our distribution at Fairway Bible Church because he can no longer afford to pay for gas. Andrew says St. Matthew's House is a blessing because the money he saves from receiving groceries allows him to pay for medicine he needs for the condition which forced him to retire early. And we'll never forget Cheryl, whose story brought us to tears. She told us at our Thanksgiving distribution that her husband passed away just a few weeks earlier from cancer. Cheryl said she lost her job and wasn't only picking up food for herself, but was going to share it with her neighbors who couldn't drive. These are just a few of the thousands of hungry families St. Matthew's House feeds each month.
Again, I'm just reminded that going to a food pantry is not an easy thing to do. You know, it's a part of a broader life. And so you don't just wake up and say, hey, you know what? I got a lot of time on my hands today. I think I'll go to the local food pantry, right? It's people who are working hard to try to find a way to improve their situation in life. And we're so honored to be a part of that in this moment. So you talked earlier about the ramp up during COVID and that scaling, but Ray, tell us a little bit more. There's so many partners. We don't do this alone. Talk about our partners a little bit. In particular, our food banks, some of the other folks, and then maybe Steve follow up with how we did that ramp up with some of those federal dollars and who helped us with that.
Yeah, the beginning of the pandemic really opened a lot of opportunity for partnerships because we knew as a community no one agency or food bank can do it all. Luckily, at the beginning of the pandemic, if we think back, there was a lot of restaurants that were closed down. There was a lot of food that was available during that time, and a lot of that food went to the food bank. So early on, the way that this process was even birthed was Harry Chapin Food Bank, one of our food bank partners, showed up with a 26-foot refrigerated box truck with about 14 pallets of fresh food on it. We had no idea what to do with it at that moment. So we basically did some organic social media, and by the end of the day had distributed about 400 meals to the community. And that was kind of the launching pad. From there, Midwest Food Bank came alongside of us, another great partner of ours, moved into a warehouse that we shared with them that was borrowed for a moment. And then just continued to find, almost like the children of Israel in the desert, moving around till we finally found this beautiful facility, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But then the idea that Steve and I had talked about with partnering with churches really came alive. And we went out first and we talked to our partners at First Baptist Church. They had a huge parking lot at the time. We were distributing roughly in the early days of that distribution, 500 to 600 meal kits twice a week. By the time that ended, we were up to 900 meal kits per distribution. And so it grew. And then as they started to look at bringing school back for the year, because they have a school, Lorna reached out to these other church partners, St. Elizabeth Seton and Fairway Church, who we're at every week. And so a lot of these church partners, Mission Community Church in Fort Myers, all stepped up and said, hey, we have people that are in our pews that would love to come out and serve their brothers and sisters in the community. And so that was it was an organic process that we had planned for a long time, but the pandemic really gave it the fuel for everything to kind of launch.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you mentioned 4 of the churches. I think there's 13 church sites
Yes,
now.
I've missed several,
And a
I'm
couple of
sure.
schools, and just really grateful for each of them. There was one other key partner that has really, I mean, there's more than one more, but the one that really stood out was the Collier Community Foundation.
Yeah, I think about the Collier Community Foundation and how they stepped up at a time when some federal monies were flowing for hunger assistance, specifically for that need. So the Collier Community Foundation stepped into the gap, and they provided the funds up front to agencies like St. Matthew's House, so we could go out and purchase the food while they waited for reimbursement on those funds. So they've just been a great partner. They made such a difference to many agencies in the community with that effort.
Great. Thank you so much. Ray, you mentioned that a lot of our food is donated through our food partners. Steve's mentioned that there's a portion of it that we need to purchase at times. There's a third component, and that's like members of our community donating food. Talk a little bit about how that works.
You know, it's always been a part of St. Matthew's House to receive donations, whether it was a thrift store or food donations. We actually have a central drop-off or donation location center at 2601 Airport Road, which is our main thrift store, our boutique thrift store, but you can donate food there. One of the things that Lorna was really aggressive in is really reaching out to businesses in the summer months and also HOAs. We've always had a following of donors that would go to Publix on the buy one, get one weeks, and they would buy one for themselves and give us the free one that they would pick up in the buy one, get ones. A lot of that stuff dries up in the summer. And so what Lorna did is she reached out to several hundred HOAs. And over the years, I think we're over 300 HOAs that have actually held food drives. Then they'll collect, we'll give them a list and they'll go and purchase those items and then donate it. We'll go by and pick it up. And then that food comes right into our warehouse that we're sitting in today. And it gets repackaged into these family food boxes that we were talking about, and then sent right back out to those families that are in need.
That's really good. I think it reminds me too of like the origin of St. Matthew's House was really a group of local residents who wanted to respond to the needs of their neighbors. And out of that initiative was birthed St. Matthew's House. And now 35 years later, we're sitting here as kind of a conduit of community generosity, of the community taking care of itself in some ways through St. Matthew's House. And so the really cool history of the organization that I'm proud to be a part of. Talk a little bit about, with all these sources of food coming in, dollars, donations, purchases, like mass purchases from places like Goya Foods, is we were in this other warehouse up the street for several months. Then we left that, or we had to leave that while we were waiting. We thought we were going to move into this one sooner, and we were in this temporary space with no home, huge need, but no home for our food. And First Baptist Church stepped up with some storage space and stuff. And then we had a unique partner in the Hoffman family, one of their companies, electrical company right up the street, vacated a warehouse at the company, totally brought us in, blessed us for the last, 2-3 months with rent-free space out of their desire to help the community as well. So a lot of sources, a lot of moving parts. Take us through this new warehouse a little bit, the life cycle of a food. When all this stuff comes in, how does it get back out? And we've got some footage here, I think, too, that we just recorded recently.
Yeah, the interesting thing is when food comes through the donation line, or our trucks are going out and picking it up from one of the food recovery efforts, or we're receiving that semi truck from Goya Foods, it all lands in this warehouse, and you can see it. It's very open and spacious, and that's what it looks like today. It's very full, but the food comes in, it goes into a sort line, and we have a team of volunteers that come in multiple shifts throughout the week. They will take these food items by category and put them at a certain space in the line, and then that team of volunteers literally moves the packaging down the line and then fills that box with the items that you're seeing on your screen. So many cans of green beans goes in a box, and so many cans of this item goes in a box. Then they package that up, and then it literally gets repacked into either a Gaylord or onto a pallet, and it goes back into one of our trucks and then out to the distribution. And so all the food that you're seeing that's on the video would last us typically about 5 weeks at the current pace that we're moving at. So that's several thousand pounds of food that we're looking at with probably, $100,000 to $200,000 in value that we're seeing on the screen right now. And that's about the pace that we're running with the 13 church partners and the hundreds of volunteers that are serving over 20,000 meal family food boxes per month.
Thank you for that. You remind me of something too, is that at the beginning, Steve talked about early, the 400 family food boxes per month, and then it jumped to 4,000 and then to 21,000. And you would think that would have abated by now, or that would have peaked. I think we might have a graphic that shows that over the last 2 years. I think even last month we jumped to around 25,000. Talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, you see a pretty good curve there. We talked before, Ray mentioned that you might expect to see a bell curve, but that's not what you see in that graph. You can see a little bit of flattening in the fall of last year. And we thought, well, it may be tapering off after COVID subsided, but then you see it take off again. And that's directly tied to the inflationary pressures that we've been talking about, the families that are really being strained by these higher costs. So the number keeps growing, and we're seeing it grow with our food bank partners. They all say the same thing. Feeding America says the same thing. So we're preparing for that. And this new warehouse is going to equip us to meet that challenge.
Thank you. So talk a little bit about, Ray. I know we do some food rescue and things like that across the community as well. But there's another purpose in this warehouse, Steve, that from the very first day I got here, you were mentioning, is that this is not only a place that's going to help us with food distribution, but also to help us be a better partner with the county as well.
So another very important partner for us is Collier County government, and in particular, the Office of Emergency Management. A while ago, when we talked to the folks there, we said we could help out in our warehouse with staging emergency supplies in the event of a hurricane or a wildfire or any crisis. So more recently, as we're getting into this new warehouse, we've been talking to that office. They're very interested in working with us, very grateful for the opportunity to work with us, and they'll provide emergency supplies when it's necessary to stage them. We'll be able to put them in the warehouse and be ready to deploy them along with food assistance. So we call this our food and emergency assistance warehouse.
Yeah, thank you. Along the way, there's been a path to get here. It's about to open next week. You saw that in that footage right there. You saw the forklifts in motion, helping move in. We hope to be operational in just a few days here. There was a really key partner along the way, the Richard M. Schultz Foundation. Talk about that relationship a little bit.
Well, we've had a long-standing relationship with the Richard M. Schultz Family Foundation. They've been great in supporting all the areas that we function in: hunger, homelessness, and addiction. But when they knew about this need for a warehouse, we told them about the warehouse we'd been renting, and we were searching for a new warehouse. Well, they stepped up with a very significant gift to enable us to go ahead, make this purchase, own a warehouse where we can really get settled and do more to help the community. So just a great thanks to the Richard M. Schultz Family Foundation.
We're going to talk in just a minute about some of our future plans. But before we do, there's another really key ingredient to this whole thing, and that's volunteers. Ray, talk a little bit about the roles that volunteers play in this whole response.
Interesting, your talking point just a minute ago about the early days of the organization was really a group of volunteers that founded St. Matthew's House from the community to serve the community. And when I mentioned earlier about the pantry being a part of the shelter, at that time, it was completely volunteer ran. They did everything. We had one staff member that assisted them in that process, but volunteers have always been extremely integral in the process of food assistance. So when we look at now, we've gone from, that first month of 4,000 where it was a lot of staff, because again, everything was shut down. So staff were manning a lot of the stations, and then we brought the volunteers back in. Of course, the church partners that we serve alongside of, First Baptist being that first one, they had a host of volunteers that were out there serving, but that just created this desire in the community for others to come alongside the other churches that were out there. We made a joke about it. We laughed and said, Pastor Kevin, there's probably some Catholics and Baptists that are mixing at some of these distributions, because I think we saw red shirts at a Catholic church, which is the shirt that First Baptist wears. Okay. But they've since incorporated themselves into the warehouse, into packing pallets. They've made it a competition. And we do this with very limited staff resources, and the volunteers are probably 98% of the effort that goes into the food assistance program.
Wow, that's incredible. I think we have a story from recently from one of the volunteers talking about their experience and how meaningful it is for them.
I can't imagine not volunteering. We have been so blessed with all that we have and so much abundance, and the opportunity to give back and to help our community prosper, grow, help these people who are hungry, maybe, feel better for the next day, and help them get up and say, well, today I'm going to do a little bit better also. And just that ability to reach out and be with them.
I love that story. I think it's like foundational to what we do at St. Matthew's House. We've got some future plans as well. And so while we'll have hundreds of volunteers a month that are engaging with our small staff to deliver literally 25,000 family food boxes a month, it's not just about the food. We talked about earlier that we're hoping to be a bigger part of folks' lives. And we've been really fortunate to meet these several thousand families and beginning to learn their stories. There's a couple of things coming, Steve, if you want to talk a little bit about the healthier options, the choice pantry, things like that.
Yeah, I think about so many aspects that we're really working on. We want it to be more than just giving out food to these hungry families, but show them better nutrition, show them a better mix of produce. So we're working hard behind the scenes to grow more of our own produce to supplement what we're getting from our food bank partners. We hear that there's going to be shortages. We expect that. So we're really gearing up, again, with more donor support to be able to grow more of our food. So that's a big item. In future distributions, now that we're getting settled in our warehouse, we plan to give dietary guides to folks so they can put together better menu planning with the food that they're receiving from us. And probably one of the most exciting aspects and plans that we have is to launch an empowerment center. This will be a training and development center that will be open to people that are in our programs, our recovery programs, our shelter programs, also our hunger programs. So we want to be able to invite people in to guide them, again, to better nutrition, better financial planning in their households, maybe even some job training so they can look to improve their income, their household income, and just move on to a better life.
Thank you so much, Ray. There's also in the Empowerment Center, there's some opportunities related to home ownership and small business entrepreneurship. Talk a little bit about those two strands.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the pressures that the families are feeling right here in Southwest Florida right now is rising rents, right? So that's creating this economic pressure on these families. And so one of the things that we would love to work with the folks that are coming through our distribution line, our residents, whether it's Justin's Place or our shelter programs, is home ownership. And how can you possibly own a home in this market, with the real estate market as it is, with, with your current financing situation? Do we help you gain value by owning your own business, and then helping you maybe work on your credit scores? We've talked a lot internally with Habitat for Humanity. There's home ownership opportunities for folks that you maybe wouldn't think could own a home in Collier County, but there are those opportunities. And so we look at the Empowerment Center as not just that. The food assistance program wouldn't just be my throat's checking out on me.
Somebody get some water.
But the food distribution program wouldn't just be like giving the man a fish, right? If we were to refer to scripture, we could then implement the process of teaching someone to fish, so that they could hopefully use their own desires, abilities, and God-given gifts to better themselves financially.
And I should add that we talk about how important donors are to our food assistance program. Another major donor has stepped up with the Empowerment Center to really be able to help us fund this project, to launch it. We're hoping to be in early in 2023. So it's very exciting as we work on the plans, and this donor is excited about working with us. We'll bring in other agencies, other partners to be able to just add a lot of value to this Empowerment Center.
Awesome. Thank you. We're going to begin to transition here to some Q&A in just a couple of minutes. There's a few ways that people can help. Is they can help us stock the warehouse. You saw pictures earlier, about that showed dozens and dozens of pallets. It looks like a lot of food. Yeah. But we went in and we asked the team that's just on the other side of the wall that's still loading it all in, how long will all this food last? And they said about 5 weeks. Is that we're running about 5 weeks ahead of our need right now. And so that is an exciting thing to see, a full warehouse. So it's got to be full over and over and over and over and over again over the rest of the year. So
yeah, it's a very active team that is moving all the time. I'll mention that we have 2 trucks that are running all the time, refrigerated box trucks. And Ray said we have a very small staff, but it's very efficient. So they work really hard, showing up early in the morning to get things started, and sometimes working late in the day to deliver food and pick up food. So it's a great team, but there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just with Alessi and some folks on the team and some volunteers earlier, and I think he got here at 4 o'clock this morning and 4 o'clock yesterday morning, just working really long, hard hours on behalf of the community right now to try to get this place up and running. And so we're really grateful. And we also recognize too, while we're sitting on these stools with a beautiful assortment of food behind us, literally less than 50 feet away, there's a ton of action happening and forklifts moving and beeping, and and we haven't had an accident yet, but there's a ton of activity in there. It is it's really exciting to see, because from my mind and yours as well, all of that activity translates into like a quick, fast response to helping meet the needs of individuals and families across our community. So
yeah, we've talked about our first in, first out method, and you saw the volunteers packing those pallets. I think Ray mentioned there's competition among some of the volunteer groups. They've competed before to see how many pallets can they pack with these boxes ready to go out to distribution. And our team tells them exactly how many they need each week for the distribution. So it's quite a process that we didn't have a few years ago. And it's really matured into now this new warehouse and this team that works so well together.
Awesome. Let's transition to some questions. We've got several questions that have been submitted. First one is, what kind of tracking or screening do you do of the folks who are participating in the food pantry or the food distributions? Is there data you're collecting? Answer, Ray, can you give us a...
Yeah, in the past, before the pandemic, we had always tracked who was coming in to get food. We took some demographic information, household information, kept it in a very simplistic software program, Excel. You may be familiar with it, just so we could see who was coming on a repeating basis. But when the pandemic started, all of that kind of went out the window for a significant amount of time. So within the last few months, our Feeding America food bank partner, Harry Chapin, has brought a software program online, which will allow all the food pantries to share data about who's coming, the demographics, what age group are they in, how many children might be in the household, or how many members in the household total. So yes, we are starting to implement that. We aren't looking to restrict how often someone can come at this point. And some of that is also going to be, how can we communicate with those individuals as we move forward? We talked about the Empowerment Center. Well, as we have meal planning that Steve talked about, as we have classes that might be available to these folks, this is going to give us that data that we can reach out and communicate with these folks on an ongoing basis. And then going past that, one of the, you just gave me this card, but this is what those folks who do give us their information, they will get like a little membership card that they are now a part of our food pantry system. And then when they come up, there's a little scan bar on the back, and they just would scan that and get counted. It would pull up their household information. We were able to track that they were in the food line that day.
Yeah, we've been using driver's licenses already, but this new system will give us a lot more data. And I see a question there about, do the various charities engaged in delivering food collaborate to avoid duplication? That's one of the key reasons for this system. So we can kind of get to know the patterns of the recipients of food and know if they are going to multiple distributions in a week. So we'll have that data now to be able to respond better.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like, what you mentioned, Ray, is like, for right now, it's not about restriction. It's more for us. It's really about how are we in better communication, offering additional resources. There's so many folks that when they come in our line, either they've got small businesses, they're trying to find ways to supplement their income, and being able to come to the Empowerment Center and participate in entrepreneurship courses and get business coaches to volunteers who jump alongside them could be life-changing and economically altering for their family. So we're really excited about that. So you mentioned earlier, so there was a question there about do you have to have an ID? I think we've touched on that already. Let's see here. How do communities or food desert areas get in touch with you if they need our support?
Yeah, that is a great question. And of course, Ray talked about our plan pre-COVID was to really get out to these food deserts in a mobile pantry method. So take a van or a truck and actually go to them so they don't have to come to a distribution. But now I think as our model has matured, we can work with our church partners who will help identify the families in need. And I think the churches can be an extension of that mobile pantry idea. So we can reach people in these food deserts with groceries every week, rather than them getting to the distribution. Many of them don't have cars. They don't have the resources to make it to the distribution lines. So it's an evolving model that I think the churches will help a lot with.
And if there's someone that's trying to identify their area as a food desert and they're asking for help, then I would say we probably need to give them our email address, give them Lorna's email address, and then we can connect with them and really maybe do some on-site, go out and look at the area and see where we could actually make an impact.
And I'll just add that FGCU has been a great partner in identifying the food deserts in our community. So we keep updated with them. I think they can be another great resource for us to get out to reach the people in these food deserts.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like a coordinated approach likely includes also, our partners at Harry Chapin Food Bank and Midwest Food Bank, Florida, to that there may be a resource closer than us that's just someone's not aware of. And so definitely reach out to us at stmatthewshouse.org if you have a need or your community has a need there as well. And we're happy to facilitate those conversations. Here's another question. Is it better to donate food or money? I'd say yes.
Both.
Yeah. But
yeah, I saw another question pop up there. Do we have we seen inflation impact the food costs? Certainly, just like every household is experiencing the impact, we also, in the food that we do buy to supplement the food donations, we're seeing just a great impact on what we can purchase, how far our cash donations go. And it's not only purchasing the food, but it's the diesel fuel in our trucks and everything that goes into the operation. So inflation has impacted us and our buying power. We are fortunate that we have some agreements and models in place where we can buy deep discounted food through our food bank partners and other suppliers that we've started working with and continue to help us out in that area.
Awesome. Here's a question from the audience. Will the Empowerment Center be open to anyone? Ray, touch on that just a little bit.
Yeah, right now we're looking at that one opportunity to be available to first residents of our programs, whether that's Justin's Place or our shelter programs. And then next, it would be extended to folks that are in our food assistance or receive food from us on a monthly basis or have received food from us. Going forward, if there's more capacity at the Empowerment Center, then we could look at that, because it's also going to be training, not just for it's not just going to offer program related trainings. It's also going to offer staff trainings and some other opportunities for classes and training from local agencies that may want to use that facility as well. So it's not just about, it has its own load limit as well. And so we'll probably fill it up with what we have planned in programs and for the food assistance folks.
And as Ray said, as we get open and explore our capacity, we think it can be another revenue source for the mission, where we can lease space or have some subscriber fees to different partner agencies that may want to use it. It's going to be a fabulous facility with really state-of-the-art audiovisual communications. And we think it's going to be a great spot. We can't even imagine all the uses for that facility right now, but I think we want to be creative and first serve the people that are closest to us, but then extend that invitation to others.
All right, Ray, last question. Do you distribute any non-food items?
We do. Well, pretty much food distribution historically has been the place that we've been able to move items in that we wouldn't use in-house. So what I mean by that, sometimes we'll get dog food, sometimes we get diapers, sometimes we get formula. Not very often do we get formula recently, but in the past, that has been something that has been donated. So the food distribution platform allows us to get those items that are non-food items out into the community for folks that need them. Not everybody needs diapers, but certainly those families that do, when we have those available, certainly they are out at the distributions for folks to take advantage of.
And I'll just add here, is in this space, we're noticing diapers and different toiletry items, bathroom tissue, paper towels, cleaning supplies. And I mentioned the Office of Emergency Management in Collier County. They plan to give us some supplies that they had purchased and they have an abundance of. So that will help out with additional needs in the community. So we're open to anything that anybody wants to donate that they feel somebody can put to good use, and we'll get it out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now, there are a couple more things that just popped in. This is not a question, but a thank you. From Richard LeBaire, CEO at Harry Chapin Food Bank, says, we're so grateful for the tremendous partnership with St. Matthew's House. Thank you for your energy, passion, and creativity. Thank you as well, Richard. We're extremely grateful for your leadership and the entire team. They're one of our most important partners in anything that we do. We're so grateful. And I think we are just about to wrap it up. Any final thoughts from either one of you guys?
Well, I'll just add that we're going to have a ribbon cutting and an open house, and you'll see that in the media. So there'll be a lot of exposure, we hope, for what we have here in this great facility and all that the team can do to really continue to serve the hunger needs in our community. So stay tuned for that. You'll see more video and reporting on that. We want to thank everybody that is with us today. And we know that others are going to see this on our YouTube channel. So we thank you for viewing and just being a part of this.
Fantastic. Let's just do a quick final, Ray. How can people be involved if they want to get involved with what we're doing right here?
Yeah, if you've heard something today that maybe pricks your heart and you say, yeah, I really got to be involved with St. Matthew's House, whether it's financial or if you want to get involved with a volunteer opportunity, we'd love to have you join us here in the warehouse or out at a distribution. Bring some water, bring some electrolytes because it's going to be hot. But certainly we have a volunteer hub where you can sign up. Just go to our website, stmatthewshouse.org. You could donate cash donations or you can register to get signed up as a volunteer and get plugged into one of the opportunities to serve. And if you feel like when you're at Publix or when you're at Aldi or one of the other grocery stores, you want to pick up some canned items, there's a list that you see on your screen right now of the things that we go through periodically and more frequently than other items. And we tend to run out of those. Those are our staple items. We have that on our website as well. And if you want to buy one of those and bring it by at 2601 Airport Road South, 34112, our friendly team of greeters and receivers would be glad to take your donation.
I'll just add that we talked about neighborhood food drives. So during the summer, if you want to mobilize and get a community food drive together, we're very grateful for that and willing to help you coordinate, come pick up the food, be a part of that. So I encourage anybody who's viewing, if your community has not done a food drive, that would be something that would really be impactful and helpful.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. This is our first of 4 monthly Zoom calls. This one about hunger. Next month is about trends in homelessness and housing here in Southwest Florida. Another powerful conversation that we're already preparing for. We know it's one of the biggest headlines in the news every single day is affordability of housing. Not just for folks who are in our programs, but for folks all across the region who are involved in community service jobs and first responder jobs and education force. It's just such an important topic. We hope you'll join us at near the end of August. We'll send that invite out here in just a few short days so you can get that on your calendar. So July here, August housing, then we'll be for recovery in September and workforce development in October. So excited that you joined us today. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day. And you got some bonus time. It looks like you got about 12 minutes back. You committed an hour and we only used 48 minutes of it. Have a great rest of the day.